All right, so now we're back. We're going to work on the square wall small function. So this is where our other input comes in. Rather than saying that we want to square 5 4 times, we're going to say square 5 until it exceeds the threshold, whether it's 500, 1,000, whatever you choose to set in that input. So let's go back to VBA, change our input parameters a little bit. We're going to recycle the code as much as we can and adapt it to this new different scenario. So let's flip back. We're going to take our function square n times v2. Let's change this to, let's call it square while small. We're still going to have that input number as an integer, but now we're going to have our threshold as our other input, right? We're not saying how many times to do this. We don't know how many times. So we're going to do the threshold. So now we still have our answer and our loop num up here. We still need to loop a certain number of times. Actually, we don't. We no longer need to keep track of how many times we're going to loop because we don't know. So we can get rid of loop num both here and here. And now our condition is going to be to do some action as long as answer is less than the threshold. So whatever this threshold is the user gives us, as long as answer is less than that, keep doing our action. We don't have to keep track of how many times we're looping. We don't really care, per se, how many times we loop through. Although actually, let's keep track of that. I'm going to backtrack a minute here. All right, it's going to be helpful to see how many times it loops so we can still visually understand what's going on while still adapting this to loop until this condition is met. All right, I'm going to undo my printing up on the earlier function. I almost forgot to update my answer there, my output value. Now we have square while small, while answer is less than or equal to threshold. And again, we're going to print out the answer so we can see it as it builds. So let's come over here, equals square while small. The number is 5. The threshold is 500. So let's go ahead and hit enter. We get the number 625. But what happened in the code? Well, it looped twice. The first time through, loop num was equal to 0, which is what it was initiated as, right? It starts as a 0. We don't really care that it keeps track of, loop number 1 is actually 1. We just want to see how it increments. So it increments from 0 the first time. The answer is 25. The second time, which it incremented up by 1 to the value of 1, now gives us an answer of 625. So it ran 2 times. If we change the threshold now to 1,000, that should trigger it to run again. And that's what we saw. It ran to 390,000. Let's change the number to 2 instead. Now 2 got squared many times. Well, how many times? Well, we can see down here that it ran, let's see, actually our immediate window got covered up. Let's run it again. It ran the first loop, it got 4. The second loop, it got 16. The third loop, it got 256. And the fourth loop, it got to 65,536. So the index, the loop num was 3. Because it started at 0, it ran 4 times. And again, this do while is looping until that condition is met. We don't know how many times it'll happen. It's just going to keep going until the condition is met. Or sorry, let's say that better. It's going to do it while that condition is met, while the answer is less than or equal to the threshold. The other way to build this is with a do until loop, right? A slight distinction. We can really do the same things, but let's just show you what that looks like. So we're going to flip this square while small v2. And now we're going to do a do until, right? The do until is going to do something until the condition is true. So right now, answer is less than or equal to the threshold, so it's already true. So it actually should not run at all for us. So let's see what happens there. So we're going to take this printing off up here. So again, the idea here is it's going to do until this thing is true. Right now, answer is less than threshold because the answer is 5. The threshold, I think, is 1,000, or the answer is 2, that initial value of input number. So as long as this is true, this loop will not run. It runs while the loop is false until it is true. So really, we're just flipping the logic on its head. So let's go see what we get when we take this number. Let's actually just square while small v2. number, comma, threshold, and we get a value of 2, which was the initial number, because we see that nothing ran over here. The loop never ran because it wasn't true. And so what we really wanted to do is do until the answer is bigger than the threshold. So since we flipped it from a true to a false kind of statement, we got to flip our equality, our weak inequality to greater than versus weakly less than. Once we make that flip and come back, we see that we get the same answer. It looped through the same way. So do until is just a different way to approach the problem. Works the exact same as do while. Functionally, it'll accomplish the same task. We just have to be careful whether we're evaluating true statements until they're false or false statements until they're true. Either way really works. They're really isomorphic to